just kiss and say goodbye. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her?
You ever hear a song so good it makes you stop in your tracks? The kind of sound that's raw, real, and way ahead of its time. From Detroit, rock rebels like with the black punk band Death.
You thought that me and you were just big game.
To gospel legends turned R&B pioneers like the Chambers Brothers. Even if the industry didn't always know what to do with them. But one thing's for sure, their music never stopped mattering.
So many times till my mama said.
Black Murda was too ahead of their time, a Detroit band mixing rock, funk, and blues with lyrics that actually said something. The industry had no clue what to do with them. They weren't trying to fit in. They were making noise that mattered. Their first album had all the raw energy, but mainstream success wasn't happening. A second one followed, but label drama, money struggles, and an industry that wasn't backing black rock bands made it impossible to keep going. They faded into the background until years later, music heads dug them up and finally gave them their due. Next, Chambers Brothers. The Chambers Brothers started out singing gospel, just four brothers harmonizing in church. But once they hit LA, they switched it up, mixing blues, soul, and folk before diving into psychedelic rock. That mix gave them a sound that didn't fit neatly anywhere. Their big break came with Time Has Come Today, a trippy, echo-filled track that defined an era. It was bold, different, and impossible to ignore. But keeping the momentum was tough. Music was shifting. Labels weren't always on board, and they slowly faded from the spotlight. They kept performing, sometimes together, sometimes solo. Some stuck with music, others moved on. But their influence locked in, and Time Has Come Today, still a classic. Next, the Stylistics. The Stylistics were impossible to ignore. Straight out of Philly, with Russell Tompkins Jr. hitting those insane falsettos, they had a sound that hit hard. At their peak, they were everywhere. You Are Everything, Betcha, By Golly Wow, and Rock and Roll Baby had people deep in their feelings. With Gamble and Huff on production, it was straight up magic. Then things changed. Russell Tompkins Jr. had to step back because of vocal issues, and without him, it just wasn't the same. Some voices just can't be replaced. Next, Mandrill. Mandrill wasn't just a band, they were a whole experience. The Wilson brothers and their crew threw funk, rock, jazz, Latin, and Afro-Caribbean beats into one big high-energy mix. Their sound was layered, loud, and actually said something. They built a solid fan base, and their live shows were insane. But the industry wanted easy radio hits, and Mandrill wasn't about that. Lineup changes, behind-the-scenes drama, and the challenge of keeping such a massive sound together made it tough to keep going. They never fully stopped, but they faded from the mainstream, though hip-hop made sure their grooves lived on. Next, Marvelettes. The Marvelettes blew up with Please Mr. Postman and made history as Motown's first girl group to hit #1. That song was everywhere. They kept it going with Playboy, Beachwood 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and Don't Mess with Bill. But the bigger they got, the messier things got. Gladys Horton was struggling, Motown's management wasn't making things easy, and the pressure started breaking them apart. When they split, things didn't get any smoother for Gladys. Money issues, legal drama, health problems. She deserved way more love for what she gave to music. Next, the Spinners. A bunch of guys from Ferndale, Michigan started out as the Domingos, then switched things up and became the Spinners. Good move, because they ran the 70s R&B scene. Their secret sauce? Smooth harmonies with just the right mix of soul and funk. But things really took off when they teamed up with Atlantic Records and linked with Tom Bell and Linda Creed. That's when they dropped I'll Be Around, Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, and Then Came You. Straight up classics. Not everything was smooth sailing, though. C.P. Spencer, one of the OG members, had to step back because of health problems, which shook things up. He passed away later on, closing a major chapter in their story. Next, death.
You thought that me and you were just beginning.
Before punk had a name, death was already doing it. 3 Detroit brothers, David, Bobby, and Dennis Hackney, ditched Motown grooves for loud, fast, rebellious rock after getting hooked on The Who and Alice Cooper. Their sound was raw, their lyrics called out society, and they had all the energy to shake things up. But labels weren't having it. Their name, picked by David for deep philosophical reasons, freaked out the industry. They refused to change it, and just like that, doors slammed shut. They dropped politicians in my eyes on their own, but without backing, they couldn't keep going. David held on to the vision while the others pivoted to gospel and reggae. Years later, crate diggers found their old tracks, and suddenly, death was getting the love they never got back then. Next, the Manhattans.
Let's just kiss and say goodbye.
The Manhattans knew how to hit people right in the emotions. George Smith, Winfred Blue Lovett, and Richard Taylor got together and made sure every song felt like something. They switched things up over time, but one thing stayed the same. They knew how to make heartbreak sound beautiful. Their biggest moment? No question. Kiss and Say Goodbye had everyone in their feelings. Lovett wrote it, and it blew up instantly. Even now, it's one of those tracks that just hits, proving they had the perfect mix of smooth melodies and raw emotion. But then came the heartbreak off stage. George Smith was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and when he passed, it left a hole nothing could really fill. The group kept moving, but some losses change everything. Next, the Dells.
I really love you. Stay.
The Dells had that kind of sound that stuck with you. Straight out of Chicago, they built a fan base that stayed loyal for decades, all thanks to those tight harmonies and the way they could really make you feel a song. Their biggest moment? Oh What a Night had R&B in a chokehold, and Stay in My Corner kept the streak going. They weren't just a one-era group, they knew how to switch things up without losing what made them them. And getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? That's next-level respect. But nothing lasts forever. When Marvin Jr. passed, it hit different. After over 60 years of doing their thing, they decided it was time to call it. End of an era. Next, the Soul Stirrers. The Soul Stirrers weren't just any gospel group, they were gospel. Their harmonies were unreal, their energy unmatched, and no matter who came and went, the music stayed elite. Then Sam Cooke walked in. His voice? Straight up magic. The second he joined, it was game over. They dropped hits like Jesus Gave Me Water and Touch the Hem of His Garment, mixing those smooth harmonies with the golden voice that would later make him a legend. But things changed. Losing lead singer R.H. Harris left a gap, and when Sam went solo, that was it. He was on his way to taking over the music world. The Temprees. The Temprees came up in Memphis with harmonies so smooth they felt effortless. They had that perfect mix of soul and funk, and when it came to love songs, they knew exactly how to pull people in. Their breakout, I Found Love When I Found You, had folks in their feelings, and it still hits the same. They kept dropping gems like Love's Calling and Two of a Kind, proving they knew how to make every track feel timeless. Then everything changed. Jasper Jabbo Phillips was and it shook the group in a way they couldn't bounce back from. After that, the Temprees just weren't the same. Next, the Bar-Kays. The Bar-Kays started as the go-to band for Stax Records, backing up some of the biggest names out there. But when they dropped Soulfinger, that was their moment. Straight-up high-energy funk that got them noticed. Later on, they leaned all the way into funk. Shake Your Rump to the Funk and Freak Show on the dance floor kept them ahead of the game, and their live shows? Pure electricity. They didn't just perform, they took over. Then tragedy hit. While touring with Otis Redding, a plane crash took most of the band. Trumpeter Ben Cauley was the only one who made it, and bassist James Alexander only missed the flight because there wasn't enough room. Next, 24 Karat Black. 24 Karat Black was way ahead of their time, and that was kind of the problem. Dale Warren had this big cinematic vision for soul music, full-on orchestras, heavy funk, and raw emotional storytelling, but not everyone got it. Their album Ghetto, Misfortune's Wealth, was bold, deep, and totally different from what was popping back then. It flopped, the label was falling apart, and the group couldn't stick together. Just like that, it was over before it really started. But fast forward, and hip-hop producers started flipping their tracks into gold. Unreleased music came out, and suddenly, what once got ignored turned into a cult classic. Next, Funkadelic.
What you doing? I want to know.
Funkadelic was George Clinton's mad science experiment. Funk, rock, and soul all mashed together with no rules. It started as a side project from his doo-wop group, but instead of playing it safe, they cranked up the guitars, got weird with the lyrics, and turned their shows into full-blown experiences. They dropped some of the wildest, most unpredictable albums ever, mixing deep grooves with messages that actually had something to say, but holding a massive, ever-changing squad together, a disaster waiting to happen. Money issues, fights, and legal headaches over the name eventually caught up to them, and Clinton moved on. The group may have faded out, but their influence didn't. Hip-hop ran with their sound. Clinton never stopped keeping it funky, and their music still feels ahead of everyone else. And lastly, the Chai Lights.
Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her?
The Chai Lights had that smooth soul touch that kept people coming back. The lineup switched up a few times, but they always knew how to deliver. Their biggest moment, Have You Seen Her, had everybody in their feelings, and Oh Girl shot straight to the top, making sure their name was set in soul history. But things didn't stay golden. When Eugene Records stepped away, it left a hole they couldn't really fill. Then life threw even more punches. Creadell Jones faced personal struggles before passing, a tough reminder of how brutal the music world can be. That kind of soul never fades.